We're just going to do a basic field dress. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. We have a slight slope here, headed down here in this creek bottom. So what I'm going to do is put the deer's head up the slope and the rear end coming down the slope. Because as I'm working on this, I want gravity to be helping me get the blood and the guts away from the animal's carcass as quickly as possible, just to keep the meat as clean as possible. Now we have a great shot on this doe right through the front shoulder, so there shouldn't be any gut material exposed to the meat right now. So I'm expecting no meat loss and a real clean intestinal cavity. So first thing I'm going to do here is flip her around, get the head up and the feet down. She is fat and chunky and healthy. When I'm by myself, if I'm on a real steep embankment, I will tie a rope around the neck and tie it off to a tree so it doesn't slide down the hill. Or if he's got antlers, hook the antlers around a tree base or something like that. But with this doe here, it's not super steep. We're going to get started. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm holding this deer between my feet, okay, and my first cut on a deer that I'm not going to shoulder mount, I don't need to worry about preserving the cape. This would be different if you're going to shoulder mount the deer. In that case, I highly recommend either having your processor do it or a taxidermist do it. But what I'm going to do is find the sternum and find where it ends, okay, which is right here. And we have the gut cavity here, and up here is the chest cavity, and this is the end of the sternum. I'm going to take my knife and edge facing me, come in under the hide and come straight up the sternum. Okay, so I'm exposing this, and then blade facing down, I'm going to gently cut. We don't have to force it. I'm letting the edge do the work. I'm gently coming down to where that sternum is. You can hear it against my knife. Okay, I'm going to turn my knife, come blade side again. If you want, you can flip around the deer and work cutting away from you. But I've done this a lot. What I'm going to do, take my knife, and now we're coming down over top of the guts. And what I'm going to do is take my knife edge, and I'm going to just slip underneath the hide. We don't want to puncture the guts with the tip of our knife. So all I'm doing here is just, you can see there's layers of fat on this deer. Super healthy deer. Okay, I have just cut through the hide, the fat, and the abdominal wall, and I am just now, here's the stomach behind it. I've taken my 2 fingers and I've got underneath all those layers of flesh, and I'm edged down, okay, towards the guts. And you can see as you cut, you're opening up that abdominal wall and the hide. But I'm not cutting any guts. All I'm doing here is using my hand as a barrier, and I'm cutting in between my fingers. So here's our guts coming out. And I'm just easing my way down all the way to between the legs here. Now once I get down here between the legs, I have to open these hips a little bit. And this is where having a partner can help. If you don't have a partner, you're gonna have to wrestle with it a little bit. So what I'm gonna do, with this hand I'm holding this leg out. I'm gonna step over this foot right here, and I'm pinning it underneath my knee and my hamstring, and my other knee is gonna keep this deer's leg apart. As these guts want to come out, just help them. Let them get out of your way. We've got no blood in here because it was a great shot, and I have a nice open abdominal wall to work with. I'm going to take the udder of this doe and cut around it. She has no milk in her. She didn't have any fawns. And now I'm going to cut down in between these legs, in between these hips. Okay, we don't want to cut on either side of these hips. We want to cut right in the middle, because in here's a lot of meat and we want to preserve that. So I'm just going to take it down to the pelvis right in between the thighs, the inner thighs of this deer. Right here is a bone. That there is your pelvis. Okay? This is very simple. Now we have the deer open all the way. What we have to do now, take this leg over and fold it back over the deer. And I have to take the vent or the rectum out of this doe. On a buck, his genitals are on the outside up here in between the legs, and all you have to do is basically cut around those and remove them. On a doe, you have the vent and the female genitalia up here as well. So don't be bashful. You're gonna have to get in here with your knife, lift the tail, clear some of the hair away. Here's our vent, anus. We're just gonna cut around it, okay? A sharp knife is gonna help here a lot. You don't want to cut too much towards the meat here, because if you puncture that vent, you want as much as you can to keep the contamination with any of your meat to a minimum. So you might have to flip it back over a time or two to get the other side. Again, you're just going to have to get in here and do it. And there's a cavity up there between the legs in the middle of that pelvis that you can get your knife up through. You can see I've got my hands on it. You're just going to have to. And we have this pretty well opened up. We're going to go around the edge of that cavity and make sure we free up that tissue. Now when we flip this deer back over, we should be just about ready to pull all of that out. You can see it's moving outside of the deer. If you look down here as I pull, it's coming out. Okay? Now you might need to take your knife and help free up some of the tissue around the abdominal wall, but for the most part, if you use your hands, you can separate it from the backside of that deer. This deer has a ton of fat. It's really kind of blocking what I'm trying to show you, but it is not hard to get in here and tear this off just with your hands. Now this is where that slope is going to come in handy, because I can very easily throw the guts downhill and work with the deer that's clean as it remains uphill. Okay, now we have the guts separate from the deer. At this point, I'm going to take my knife and come up here to the chest cavity again. So I'll have you stand around here. We're going to come back to the chest cavity. I'm going to take my knife underneath that sternum. Having a good strong knife here will help. You do not have to split the sternum, but I prefer to. If you don't want to, get your knife, work around the diaphragm on both sides of the rib cage, and pull your hands up in there, grab above the heart, and pull everything out. That's how you do it if you're going to cape a buck and not split the sternum as well. But I prefer to split the sternum. Take my knife right up the seam of these ribs. It's not very hard once you find it. We're just going to open that chest cavity right up, and it makes clearing out the diaphragm a lot easier. And then you're going to take your knife above the heart and the lungs and cut crossways across the esophagus. Once you get that split, reach in there and grab it. his bullet went right through here, so things are pretty mangled, but once you pull all that out, man, it gets easy. I'll take out this diaphragm because it's holding things together. And there you have it, guys. Let that drain, get all the blood, and it'll be kind of coagulated. You're gonna want that to all be separate. Get this fat out of here. Kind of clean it up for yourself a little bit. Now you can see my hands are a little messy. Okay, it's gonna happen. You can bring gloves if you want them. This is part of deer hunting. You're just gonna have to get over this part of it. Once you do a few of them, it'll become like second nature. If we weren't filming, this deer would have taken me about 3.5 minutes to complete. And you pick it up just like this and let it all drain. Put the head uphill. Now this deer is field dressed, ready to throw in the back of your truck and take home. If you want to wipe it out a little more, that's fine. I highly recommend not spraying a deer out unless you've gut shot it. If you, you introduce water to the body cavity of this deer, you're going to spread bacteria as it splashes around. The best thing you can do if you want to clean it out, instead of spraying it out with like a hose, you can take a cup of cold water and rinse it gently, and take some rags, some shop rags that you don't care about, and wipe it out if you really want to. Otherwise, the blood that has touched the different parts of this animal, while it may be carrying some bacteria, it's not spreading around the deer as much as it would if you sprayed out with a hose. So we have a really clean deer here anyways, which is awesome. So we're going to pick some of this fat off of here to help the meat cool down as quickly as possible. And we're just going to clean it up a little bit before we go get the truck. Now, if you guys want to see how to process a deer at home, I have another video on the channel. I'll put the link up here, and you guys can see how to do one of these at home all yourself. It's a really rewarding experience. You can share it with friends and family and know that you did everything from the field to the table. It's an excellent skill to learn to get a little more self-reliance. It'll really boost your confidence, especially as you get more in your hunting career as well. But this deer is ready to go to a processor or go home to butcher as it is right now. So as always, guys, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, and God bless.